The fall of Ile-Ife. The air was thick with smoke and chaos as Ile-Ife crumbled under the merciless attack of enemy forces. The once thriving kingdom, known for its music, art, and vibrant marketplaces, was now a battlefield. Flames consumed the palace walls, and the cries of its people echoed into the night. Inside the royal chambers, King Adebayo paced frantically. His regal robes were disheveled, and his face bore the weight of despair. In his arms was his 2-year-old daughter, Abeni, her innocent eyes oblivious to the devastation unfolding around them. "My king," Folake, his most trusted servant, called out, her voice trembling but resolute. The elderly woman knelt before him, her weathered hands clasped tightly. "There's little time. The soldiers are closing in. You must let me take the princess." The king hesitated, holding Abini closer. "How can I send her into the unknown, Folak? She's just a child, my only child. If they find her, they won't." Folak interrupted firmly, rising to her feet. "I'll protect her with my life. You must trust me, my king." Tears welled in King Adebayo's eyes as he looked down at his daughter. She giggled softly, reaching for the beaded necklace around his neck, unaware of the danger surrounding her. "Listen to me, my little star," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You are destined for greatness, Abeni. You are the light that will guide our people out of darkness." With a trembling hand, he placed her in Folake's arms. The servant held the child tightly, her eyes filled with sorrow but also determination. "Take her and run," the king commanded. "Go as far as you can, hide her, protect her, and keep her safe. Promise me, Folek." "I promise, Your Majesty," Folek replied, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, the palace gates crashed open, and the sound of enemy soldiers echoed through the halls. King Adebayo drew his sword, his expression hardening. "Go now. I will hold them off." Folak hesitated for a moment, her heart breaking as she turned to flee. She clutched Abeni tightly as she ran through the secret passageways of the palace, the cries of soldiers and the clash of steel growing louder behind her. As she emerged into the night, the city of Ile-Ife was unrecognizable. Buildings burned, and the streets were littered with debris. Folake didn't stop. She ran past terrified villagers and fallen guards, her only thought being the safety of the child in her arms. Back in the palace, King Adebayo stood alone in the throne room. He fought valiantly, but the enemy forces overwhelmed him. As he fell, a bittersweet smile crossed his face. "Stay safe, my star," he whispered in his last breath. Outside the city, Folake found a temporary shelter in a dense forest. She cradled Abini, who had begun to cry, her small hands reaching for her father. "Hush, my princess," Folake murmured, her voice trembling. "We must be strong now." The distant sounds of pursuit grew louder, and Folake knew their safety was fleeting. She pressed a kiss to Abini's forehead and whispered, "Your time will come, little one. You will make Ile-Ife proud." With that, she continued her journey into the unknown. A servant's defiance. The bustling palace of Ijebu Ode was alive with activity. Servants scurried under the watchful eyes of guards, and the stone floors of the king's court gleamed under the endless labor of weary hands. Among the servants was a young woman named Abini. On her knees, she scrubbed tirelessly, her calloused hands moving rhythmically as if in defiance of her surroundings. Though Abini could not remember her parents or her homeland, she often dreamed of a distant place filled with joy, music, and love, a place where she was more than a nameless servant. Those dreams sustained her, but reality was quick to remind her of her chains. "Abeni," came the frantic voice of Kemi, her closest friend. Kemi rushed into the room, her face pale with worry. The guards are coming. Hurry! Albany calmly gathered her cleaning tools and stepped aside just as a group of royal guards stormed through, shouting orders. Their heavy boots echoed ominously, a reminder of the price of disobedience. Kemi shook her head as she watched Abini. "You're too bold," she muttered, glancing nervously at the retreating guards. "One day, they'll notice the fire in your eyes, and it won't end well for you." Straightening her back, Abeni replied firmly, "They can take everything, my freedom, my dignity, but not my spirit. That belongs to me, Kemi." Her friend sighed. "Spirits don't survive here, Abeni. Only silence does." A hidden discovery. The palace quieted as night fell, but Abini's work continued. That evening, she was assigned to clean the library, a grand chamber filled with ancient scrolls and books she was forbidden to touch. Yet curiosity, a fire that burned too brightly within her, refused to be extinguished. As she dusted a high shelf, a brittle scroll fell to the ground. Carefully, she unrolled it to reveal an old map, its edges frayed with time. It depicted lands she didn't recognize, but one name stood out: Ile-Ife. Her fingers traced the map's delicate lines until they rested on a peculiar mark. Beside it, an inscription read, "When the heir returns, Ile-Ife will rise again." Her heart raced. "Heir?" she whispered. "Could it be me?" "What are you doing, Abini?" The deep voice startled her. She turned sharply to see Prince Deji, the king's son, leaning casually against the doorway. His piercing gaze made her feel exposed, as though he could see into her very soul. Clutching the map to her chest, Abeni tried to mask her fear. "Nothing, Your Highness. Just cleaning." Deji stepped closer, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. "That's an odd thing to clean so intently," he remarked, nodding toward the scroll. Abeni hesitated, but didn't waver. "Knowledge deserves care, even if I am not allowed to possess it." Deji smirked, though his expression was thoughtful. "You're different, Abeni. I've noticed it before." "I'm just a servant," she replied, her voice steady. "Servants don't look at their captors with defiance," he said softly. "You carry something stronger than submission." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hallway. Deji's expression changed, urgency flashing in his eyes. "Hide the map. Now." Abeni quickly rolled it up and tucked it into her tunic just as Kemi burst into the room. "Abeni, the guards are looking for you." Deji straightened, his princely demeanor snapping into place. "I'll handle it," he said firmly, his gaze lingering on Abeni for a moment. Kemi grabbed Abeni's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Come on," she whispered. As they fled the library, Abeni's mind raced. Who was Prince Deji? An ally? An enemy? And what did he know about Ile-Ife hope in the shadows? The moon hung low in the night sky as Abeni lay awake in the servants' quarters, her fingers clutching the hidden map. The inscription echoed in her mind: "When the heir returns, Ile-Ife will rise again." But what could it mean? Could she, an orphan servant, truly be connected to a lost kingdom? Kemi stirred beside her, muttering in her sleep. Abeni glanced at her friend and felt a pang of guilt. Kemi had always warned her to stay silent, to avoid drawing attention, yet Abeni couldn't ignore the stirrings in her heart. Her thoughts turned to Deji. His words had unsettled her. Did he know more about her past than he let on? And why had he helped her hide the map? As the first rays of dawn crept into the room, Abeni made a silent vow. She would uncover the truth about Ile-Ife, no matter the cost. Her journey had only just begun, and though danger loomed in every shadow, so did the faint glimmer of hope. The return of Princess Abini. For 16 long years, Abini lived as a servant in the kingdom of Ijebu Ode, unaware of her royal lineage. Despite the harsh treatment, her spirit remained unbroken.